rail disaster, police say final toll will be much higher.
Survivors tell their stories. 10 are fighting for their lives.
Search for answers. How soon will we know what went wrong?
And the Thatcher phenomenon still making waves in Blackpool.
From ITN, the ITV Lunchtime News with John Suchet and Julia Somerville.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme.
The sheer scale of the Paddington rail disaster is still only emerging today as police and fire services begin their search of the most badly burned carriage. Police confirmed they'd found another body this morning, bringing the death toll to 27, but that figure is expected to rise significantly as the day goes on.
The search is concentrating today on a first-class carriage of the Great Western Express train thought to have been crowded with commuters waiting to get off. Heavy lifting equipment is on its way to the scene of the crash. Today, police leading the operation said it was a grim and difficult task that would take some time. From the scene, Ben McCarthy reports.
We're hearing it.
Well, I'm sorry, we're having a problem with that report. We'll, of course, come back to it later in the programme. But for the moment, we cross live to the scene and our senior correspondent, Mark Austin. Mark, what is going on there now?
Well, I think, John, what Ben McCarthy was going to tell you was that this is a very grim scene today. What they're doing is preparing the way, making the carriages safe, these burnt-out, mangled carriages safe, so that the fire crews can go in to begin this very grim job of removing the bodies that we know, or the police tell us, are in these carriages. And one particular carriage, which, if you can pick up our pictures from the second camera, you can see the pathologists are now beginning to work on this second carriage. It's covered in tarpaulin. This is the carriage where the remains of the passengers, the burnt-out remains of the passengers, are contained. And the job today involves knocking down some buildings at the side of the railway track, bringing in heavy lifting equipment and cranes to stabilize that carriage. Then the pathologists can get in to do their work, the forensic teams can get in to do their work, and they can begin the task of removing the last bodies from this desperate accident.
Mark, you've been speaking to some of the rescuers this morning. What have they been saying to you?
Well, what they're saying is that the tremendous challenge they face in identifying the bodies, once they get them out of this carriage, they're going to have to use dental records, they're going to have to use jewellery, and the focus is really switching in many ways to people whose relatives they believe were on this train, in this carriage, but they have no firm word, no confirmation. We're hearing stories of relatives an hour after the accident, phoning desperately to reach their loved ones. The rescuers here are telling us how those phones rang out very eerily, and of course they went unanswered. We're dealing with a very grim scene here. Go on for hours. Some of these
in one of those carriages, and a great deal of desolation in there.
The first coach from the high-speed intercity train, which is now covered in tarpaulin, is where the rescuers are concentrating their efforts at the moment. They have no idea how many people were in the carriage as it approached Paddington. This is the part of the train which bore the full force of the collision, then filled with flames and toxic smoke as fire took hold. Because of the precarious angle at which many of the carriages are balanced, it's making the rescue workers' job very difficult and very dangerous. It's going to be many hours before the rest of the bodies are brought out, a task which the officer in charge here has described as extremely harrowing. From the trackside, it's also now possible to see how the Thames train travelling out of London was ripped apart, the roof of one carriage now resting on top of the intercity train, torn off like the lid of a sardine can. The only way the engines and their carriages can be removed from the track is by using a huge 100-ton crane, which will move onto the site later today, but it will be a slow and complex operation.
We're waiting for heavy lifting gear to be put in place. That's going to be taking place during the day. A 100-ton crane has coming down from Stockport. It's going to be assembled. The roadway is going to be constructed, which is going to involve the demolition of some buildings at the trackside. And until the large crane is in place, and it's going to take a number of hours to assemble, we're not going to be able to get some of the train wreckage removed.
As the health and safety executive begin their work trying to find out what went wrong, the police are now indicating that the death toll will rise significantly. In the last hour, the most senior police officer here has expressed his fear that the number of dead in this crash will be worse than the Clapham rail disaster in 1988, which claimed the lives of 35 people. Ben McCarthy, ITN, West London.
To help them discover the identities of those who lost their lives, police have set up 4 centres for relatives of passengers still unaccounted for. Counsellors will be there to offer support, and Great Western Trains is extending a counselling service to anyone involved in yesterday's crash. Many of the survivors are still being treated at hospitals across London. This lunchtime, 10 people remain in intensive care. Juliet Bremner has the details.
Badly injured but counting his blessings. 24-year-old Brendan Bentley was in the first carriage of the Thames commuter train when his world was literally turned upside down.
Just a big sudden surge, and all the wind being knocked out of me, and then just all bits of seat and everything just coming from over my shoulders. Yeah, just darkness. Tried to get up, and there was plenty of people about telling me when to calm down, and just trying to stumble my way out of the door.
He knew that if he didn't get out, he'd be burned to death.
I could see the flames, and there was some people trapped underneath the seats, so we had to try and get over them and tried to give them a hand, but we couldn't. So then it was first priority just to get off the carriage.
Doctors removed Brendan's spleen in an emergency operation. Of the 47 people still in hospital, 20 are being treated at St Mary's. 5 remain on the danger list.
It does have an effect, and I mean, last night was still trying to wash the smell of burns out of my body. It takes some time.
The specialist burns unit at Chelsea and Westminster is dealing with some of those most critically injured in the fire, but patients are scattered around 6 hospitals in all. Relatives who are with the injured here at St Mary's Hospital at least have the comfort of knowing that they are alive. Dozens of others are still tormented because they don't know what's happened to their loved ones. Police at the trauma centres are keenly aware of the delicate and distressing nature of the job, but warn that identification won't be simple.
People may have expectations that we will identify in a matter of hours or days. I think that's unrealistic. This could take many weeks.
At Reading Station, where many had started yesterday's fateful journey, there's the realisation that schools won't ever be going home. Juliet Bremner, ITN, St Mary's Hospital, London.